On today's episode, we're going to tell you about 10 things that surprised us on our 11-day road trip to Ireland.
Number 10, we found fewer tourists once we got outside of the bigger cities like Dublin and Galway. Once we got north of Galway, when we went to Connemara, Sligo Town, County Donegal, and then into County Antrim, we don't recall really running into any Americans up there, and that surprised me very much. I think it's their loss because there's so much to offer in that area.
The northwestern part of the island has some really beautiful wild scenery. Up in Sligo, County Donegal. One of our favorite Irish YouTubers, The Wandering Irishman, recently moved from the Dublin area to Sligo, and he's been doing some wonderful videos, so we'll put a link below. Take a look at his videos. You might really enjoy them. Number 9. They seemed more environmentally conscious than Americans in our area of the country, at least. BYOB means something totally different there. It means bring your own bag. There is a tax on plastic bags. Now, I do think there are a few places in the States that do that, but it's certainly not nationwide like it is there. A lot of the regulations come out of the EU or come out of the UK versus in the United States. There are some national environmental things, but areas are also subject to county or state laws regarding the environment. So it tends to be much less standardized here in the States. In more than one hotel, you had to have your room key in a slot by the door in order to keep the electricity working. More than once, Chris took his key out of the slot and left the room, and I would be standing there, and suddenly I was in the dark.
My bad.
So the bathroom is very nice, except the lights are shutting off automatically. Also, with regards to electricity or power, when we were staying in a cottage in Bushmills, there was a hot water boost that we had to figure out. You needed to push a button in order to boost the hot water up shortly before you took your shower.
And I found that out right away one morning.
We had one day with some rather cool showers until we figured that out. Recently, there's been a ban on burning peat. Now, in the States, we think of peat as peat moss that we use for gardening, but over there, it's a very traditional form of fuel for heating. Peat is humus or plant material that's decomposed. They dig it out of bogs or fens where it dries, and once it dries they can store it and they use it to burn. But it is rather bad for the environment apparently, and so there has been a ban on that. That's quite controversial because there are still families who generations back have owned the rights to dig peat on their own land, and so it's not really being enforced as much as you might think. There are mixed feelings about that. If you have some personal experience with that or you know more about that, we'd love to hear in the comments about it.
Yeah, I think some families are what we would call here in the United States maybe grandfathered into harvesting of peat. So if anyone can clarify that for us, that'd be great. So number 8, I was really surprised not only at the number of roundabouts, but some of the locations of them. Like when we're cruising down a 2-lane motorway, we're cruising along at 80 kilometers an hour, and next thing you know, there's a sign for a roundabout, where in the U.S. we would have an overpass with 4 exit ramps. That was a little bit of a surprise. And in Ireland, last I read, there were around 2,000 in the whole country. In the U.S., we have 9,000, but they're spread over 50 states. And if we looked at Indiana, which is the same size as Ireland, it has maybe a little over 500 roundabouts in the state. The reasons that we're going to roundabouts is the studies have shown they're much safer. Accidents are fewer, and severe accidents where people get T-boned or something like that have been dramatically reduced in these areas where there's roundabouts being built.
Also, we were just talking about the environment. Roundabouts are better for decreasing emissions because they're not sitting at a stoplight and idling the car, which causes more emissions.
Right.
Indiana is the proud home to Carmel, Indiana, which lays claim to having the most roundabouts of any city in the U.S. So you'll enjoy this photo showing off Carmel's roundabouts.
Or not.
Number 7, natural sights can be a bit of a hike. Here in the States, when you go to a national park to see some natural site, Mount Rushmore or the Grand Canyon, usually parking is fairly close to where you go to see the site. Not so in Ireland. You do have a good walk when you're going places, especially we noticed up on the northern coast of the island. Carrick Reed, Giant's Causeway, likewise, that was a really long walk. Cliffs of Moher, it was accessible by wheelchair, but it was a steep incline up to see Cliffs of Moher. I would not want to push a wheelchair up that incline. If you have trouble with mobility issues, be sure you check the website of the places you're going. Call and ask them about mobility accommodations. I know there are some places where they had shuttles at Giant's Causeway. You could get a shuttle to take you down. There are also viewing areas. Check online. We saw in TripAdvisor some people had posted what their experiences were with using accessibility at some of the sites in Ireland. So I would recommend that you do that.
When you see photos on YouTube or on the internet, sometimes to get to those locations are a bit of a hike and they aren't easily accessible. So keep that in mind. You will get a view sometimes if you're limited on where you can go, but you may not get the one that you're really looking for.
Right. You might not get that money shot that you keep seeing in magazines and on YouTube. Be sure you wear good shoes, though, because you are going to be hiking. The terrain is going to be elevated, and you want to be comfortable.
Absolutely. So, number 6, I was surprised at the number of sheep laying on the side of the road when we were driving. I expected to see sheep. I expected to see maybe a herd crossing the road to slow us down during our trip. We never really saw that. We just saw random sheep laying next to the road. And my thought was, what is going on here? Why aren't they penned up, or they can get hurt or killed, and I don't want to be the one blamed for killing someone's livestock. It surprised me quite a bit.
We do have sheep here in Indiana, but they are usually fenced. I'm pretty sure that in the far west, Montana, areas like that out in the western United States, there are places where they graze their sheep openly. However, usually that land is only owned by one rancher or one farmer. Here, it's not at all unusual for farmers to graze their sheep together with other farmers, and that's why they often mark them with different colored paint. If you're interested in that, take a look at our video on paintball sheep. We'll put a link up above.
It does explain a few things.
Number 5, coffee was easy to come by. This was a huge relief for me. I knew that Ireland was one of the top consumers of tea in the world. I was not a huge hot tea drinker. Here we tend to drink it in the wintertime only, and we drink it with lemon or sugar. We don't usually drink it with milk or cream, which is very common there. Getting ready to go to Ireland, I wanted to make sure that if I couldn't find coffee, that I was comfortable with drinking tea with milk. So I even bought some Irish tea and drank some of it so I would get used to it, and I thought, yeah, I can deal with this. Now, one thing that we did notice, if you order coffee at breakfast in a restaurant, it comes with your meal. Here in the States, usually they'll come and take your drink order first. And so while you're waiting for your meal, they bring your coffee and you can sip on your coffee while you're waiting. Now, I will say that when we stayed in the Ireland B&B Avoca House in Galway for a few nights, Miss Kathleen, our hostess, God bless her, had a pot of French press coffee on our table first thing every morning.
That was great.
It was. She earned a place in our hearts, let me tell you. So while we're talking about coffee breaks, let's take just a short break from our list. We want to thank those of you who are subscribers. However, only 5% of our viewers actually subscribe to our channel. 5. The other 95% of you who are watching our videos are not subscribed. It doesn't cost a thing to subscribe. All you have to do is push that button. Show them where it is, Chris.
It's right down there.
It's that little pink square. Just press that button so you can subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, and it means a lot to us. It helps us continue to bring you content that you'll enjoy. If you find value in this, please subscribe to our channel. Now, back to our list.
Number 4, it takes a little bit longer to drive from one area to another in Ireland. With the age of the country versus the age of the country in the US, there were already road systems and pathways and farmers' routes. In the US, at least in the central part of the country, flatter areas, the plains and such, everything was laid out in a grid type system. In Ireland, there aren't that many grids set up. I won't say that the US doesn't have that. In the hills of southern Indiana near the Ohio River, there's a lot of small windy roads. Take you a while to get from point A to point B.
When we were planning on where to travel each day, even though we used satellite navigation system to kind of calculate how long we thought it would take us to get from one point to another, it took us longer. So that's something that you'll want to take into consideration when you're planning your travels from day to day.
You think you're going to average 80 kilometers an hour for the whole trip, but you're going to slow down and possibly stop or at least yield at several roundabouts on the way. So it's not a direct shot, but it works, and you just have to plan for it.
Number 3. Bars close earlier in Ireland than they do in the Chicago area. This really surprised me. Because Ireland has such a pub culture and is so famous for it, I was really surprised that the bars most nights closed before midnight. Now, when we were there...
You're such a party girl.
I know. I'm up so late. Not. When we were there, the bars actually were closing earlier than they are now. It has changed since then. Now in Chicago, the bars are open until 2 a.m. Monday through Saturday and 3 a.m. on Sunday. There are in both places what they call late bars. In Chicago, late means 4 a.m. Monday through Saturday and 5 a.m. on Sunday. In Ireland, with the new regulations, late bars with special licenses have their hours extended until 2:30 a.m., and nightclubs are able to stay open until 6 a.m.
The number 2 thing that surprised me was, as we spoke to people and would get into a little bit of a conversation about where they go, where they travel, so many of them will fly to Spain or France or Italy, even up to Scandinavia. People were telling me this, that they could fly from Dublin to a lot of major cities in Central and Western Europe in under 3 hours. And I thought that was just amazing. It's not that far. And if you don't like to fly, I think it's Dublin, where there's a ferry that will take you across to the UK. And you can travel across the UK and then take the Chunnel train to Paris. It was very surprising, the ease of that type of traveling. And the number 1 thing that surprised us about Ireland was that the weather is not as bad as you think it is. It doesn't rain nonstop every day. It does not. However, the weather is very changeable, especially along the coast, which, since it's an island, there's a lot of coastline. Yes. If a local gives you weather advice, take it. We had a few times that locals gave us weather advice and we followed it, and it really helped us out. It changed our day plans, but it worked out much better because we ended up hiking or sightseeing in sunshine, or at least partial sun, rather than constant spitting of rain or just little showers here and there. There's a saying, there's no such thing as bad weather,
just bad clothing. So especially during the shoulder seasons of spring and fall, if you're there, dress in layers so that you are always warm. You want to be sure and have a hat, gloves, and a scarf with you. Throw it in your backpack. The day we were at the Cliffs of Moher, it was chilly and windy, but it was sunny. And so we started out with quite a few layers on. I noticed as we walked from O'Brien's Tower down to Hag's Head, we got warmer and warmer, and the day got warmer, and so we were just kind of shedding clothes and putting them in our backpack as we went. Don't take an umbrella because the wind is just going to wreak havoc with it. Take a rain jacket, something that's easily packable that you can put away when you don't need it. If it says there's an 80% chance of rain, yeah, it's probably going to rain, but it might only rain for 20 minutes. It's not going to rain nonstop all day. Now, that being said, if you know there's a good chance of rain that day, have an alternate plan. Have a museum or something indoors that you can go to at least for part of the day if you need to get out of the weather.
And I'm sure we may get some comments on that statement about whether it could rain all day or not. We did not experience that, however.
No. Another Irish YouTuber that we watch quite often is Don's Rants and Travels. And Don is always talking about the reason Ireland is so green is because of the rain and because it rains all the time. So this is for you, Don.
Cheers. So next week, we're going to go through how we planned our trip. It took us maybe a year to get it all put together on what we wanted to do. Please watch.
Yep, and we will see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.